Hello, welcome to WeWednesday. One second. Today we have Vinay Nirmala, who is. Hang on one second. Oh yeah. So yeah, today we're gonna have Vinay Nirmala. They identify as non-binary, and they're a journalist and multimedia producer. Let me just invite them. Hello, welcome everybody. Can you all hear me okay? So yeah, like I was saying, today's topic will be inclusive journalism, mostly around why, how does it make a difference and why it needs to be inclusive. A little distorted, okay, I'll just try and be a little loud, if that's okay. Hello, Vinay. Let me just send another invite. Vinay, one second. I sent another invite, Vinay. Just let me know if you received it. Hi, Sonali. Okay, technical issues. You should have them now.
Hi.
Hi, finally. Yay.
How are you, Dipti?
Good, good. How are you? How's your day?
Doing great. Thanks.
Okay. So let me just quickly introduce you. I mean, I've already introduced you. So I'm quite excited to have this conversation. So so Vinay Nirmala is a journalist and a multimedia producer and also a D&I trainer. They've been working in journalism space for a while, and they're pretty vocal about why and how inclusive journalism should be. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that today. Do you want to add anything?
I think we'll definitely have a lot of things going on while in the conversation, but thank you for having me. I'm really glad that, a conversation on journalism is happening because I think it's really important and it's one of the burning issues,
Yep,
not just inclusive in terms of LGBT rights, but for inclusion and
yep,
intersectionality overall as a social issue. So I'm glad that we're going to talk about it today.
absolutely. Uh, so first of all, let's just get to know a little bit about you. How was your, like the cliche question, like how was your coming out? And this is something we ask all our, so that more relatability happens,
Yeah.
right? So
I'm
how
gonna
was
have
that?
a
Like,
positive one because I honestly don't have a coming out story per se. I
okay.
always knew that I am gay because I have my mother and my sister. They've been a backbone all through my life. Um, so I've been through a lot of harassment, bullying as a kid in school, but then they've always had my back. Be it about legal issues, be it about making me feel safe at home. That conversation never really happened. So, of course, went through all the hiccups that every queer kid goes through, but didn't really have the force to be the binary man that you have to be.
Right.
And later when I grew up and I was actually in first year of college, I had to go to a very conservative engineering school. And I always lived under the fear. So I was what, 16 years old when I was actually watching 𝘞𝘌 𝘊𝘰𝘮𝑗𝑠's the LGBT edition episode. And I had a couple of people I knew. So I had my mother and my sister next to me, and all of a sudden, this puppy inside me started screaming because I think that was one of those best shows for our rights for the first time on television. And having people that you know, having because I grew up watching, Simran's work, Harish's work, and it felt really inspiring to me. And all of a sudden, I started cheering up. And I had my mother and my sister both looking at me. They're like, "Why are you screaming so much? I mean, I understand that you're happy. But what's this sudden joy?" And I said, "Nothing. They're my friends." And for that second, I was like, "Oh my god, did I just like tell her for the first time that I actually have, queer friends?" And my mother's like, so I come from a very typical Maharashtrian family. Both my parents are
Right.
Marathi. So, and I was, till this time, I was actually under the assumption that I'll start working since I turned 18 because I knew that my privileged family is probably going to throw out. That was my assumption. But my mother tells me, "Oh my God, are you also gay?" And I had lost it by then. She was giggling while she asked that question. And
Oh.
cried. I cried buckets. And I still remember I locked myself in my bedroom for the entire day. And the next day morning, it absolutely felt like that conversation never happened. And I was still sobbing. And, my mother just hugged me. She's like, "You know what?" She said in Marathi, ki, "मी तुला ज्या दिवशी जन्म दिला त्याच दिवशी मी तुला स्वीकारलंय," which basically means I accepted you the day you were born. So regardless of however and whoever you are, that doesn't make any difference to me. And that's
Right.
when she tells me all this while throughout my childhood, she's been seeking into my personal diaries and reading stuff. So my mother's more, I always tell this to people, my mother's more gay than I am. So I didn't really have a coming out issue. I was just forced out of the closet. So yeah, it's been well since then. And I think it's a privilege that I've always acknowledged that a lot of people don't really have. And that has also sort of, made me more vocal about
Hmm.
equality and equity for the community because I feel really glad to being able to be in this space because for us family matters first.
Yep.
As much as however conservative are, you would want to seek their acceptance because later in time you feel like, "Oh, अच्छा मुझे तो जरूरत नहीं है, मैं तो घर छोड़ के चला जाऊंगा." But it was only when I grew up I saw a lot of underprivileged friends,
Hmm.
not coming from such good families where they understand their
Hmm.
kid. So
Hmm.
that's been a learning. Coming out
Hmm.
never happened, but the situation made me learn how I should celebrate what I have and probably, give that umbrella to all. So since then, my mom's been standing up for a lot of friends. So we always, come around if we have any issues. And my mother's now like the Marathi gay mother for the community.
You say you
No,
don't have a story. You have such an adorable story, and you say you don't have a story.
it is a little boring at times, because I still remember मुझे सास बहू वाली कहानी चाहिए थी ऑयल बालाजी टाइप्स मैं चाहता था I don't have because people have such dramatic stories. Oh my God,
Yeah.
ये हो गया वो हो गया, and I'm like, I'm the one who cried. You literally didn't even hit me, and I'm not promoting violence. I'm sorry, no one should go through that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
अंदर drama चाहिए होता है ना because I'm very dramatic in nature. So I want like people to know my story, like a little spice in life, just like my food, but it's
Huh.
bland.
Yeah. It's like no reaction.
Absolutely no. I tell her in this, probably you should just like go and rewind that situation and I'll be a little happier.
How was it with your friends or at work?
Friends at work. So I'm a very adamant person when it actually comes to equity at workspace. So
Hmm.
I've been with the Times Group for the last 5.5 years. Before that, I was working with a German company in the automobile industry.
Hmm.
So coming from an engineering background, it was very conservative in the beginning for a year and a half. But I purposely quit the company because I had to go through a lot of bullying at work, and it affected
Hmm.
my, mental health, and I couldn't really be myself, which affected my productivity as well. So that's when in 2016, I decided that I will not even interview for a company which is not inclusive enough. So that's
Hmm.
that's exactly when Times actually came in. I never really thought I would get an opportunity into the journalism background, considering I don't really have a educational qualification for it.
Right.
But it happened in meantime while I was working with a couple of community organizations. So I had made it, I still remember this was in June 2016. I had made it a very clear point that I will come on board if only you are, inclusive enough. I mean, I understand that you talk about a lot of our issues, but things can
Hmm.
get different inside a workspace. So
Hmm.
even though the organization is 180 years old and plus, but initially, yes, I did face a lot of hiccups because even when you have policies at place or not, a mindset is something that doesn't change easily. It's just like our IPCs. You have laws, but changing the mentality is different. As much as people think that journalism is very inclusive, but the situation in a newsroom is very difficult, and it's very different because you
Hmm.
have a lot of ideologies having a fight together. It's like Mumbai ki Bhel Puri. There's too much of flavors in your palate. So initially, of course, I did have my own struggles. I'm not saying that I did not go through bullying. I sort of did go through a little bullying, not to a major
Hmm.
extent, but tane kasne, you can't like stop people looking at you or, giggling
Yeah.
at you. That happened. There were phobic people around, but I dealt with it slowly one by one because, generally when people talk about phobia and there's a certain hatred. But when I
Hmm.
understand phobia comes when you do not have knowledge about a particular topic or an issue.
True.
So instead
True.
of applying, a lot of other tactics, I prefer applying reverse psychology where I would rather, sit with a queerphobic person,
Hmm.
understand why do they have the phobia in them, what are those hiccups,
Hmm.
what problems do they have, and, accepting.
Yeah.
Not that I'm dying for
Yeah.
acceptance, but it is affecting other people like me who are not strong enough. So
Yeah.
that's a strategy that I applied with times initially in understanding how my colleagues and people from different teams have certain problems or do not have understanding because जरूरी
Hmm.
नहीं है कि किसी मीडिया पर्सन को नहीं सारी इंफॉर्मेशन हो बिकॉज लोगों का अक्सर ये मानना होता है कि चलो मीडिया में काम करते हैं पढ़े लिखे हैं you talk to a lot of different social circles but things are honestly very different. I'm being very candid. Things are very different in a newsroom
Yeah.
and it was for me it was more personal because journalists are like a social bridge. You communicate between officials and the society. So it is really important that your ideology is strong enough that you stand for the society that you work in for because
Yep.
a major chunk of your job is a lot of social work because you deal with human issues, human interest, a lot of other multiple areas. So for
Hmm.
me, that was a major chunk. Keeping aside the fact that I'm going to work with you, you will
Hmm.
inspire and talk to thousands of people. There will be
Yeah.
lakhs and crores of people watching you on a daily television. So ये
Absolutely.
आपके लिए बहुत ज्यादा मायने रखता है कि आपकी सोच और विचार दूसरों को गलत तरीके से इन्फ्लुएंस ना करे. So when I actually
Absolutely.
had that conversation on board, that is how people are, so the thinking slowly and eventually, it started changing the track. Ki, acha, this is not just affecting Vinay in his area, it is also affecting other people. It is affecting my own work. So
Yep.
took it slowly. It wasn't much
Yeah.
of an issue, honestly, because it's been a very, very free workspace since beginning. But कभी कभार आपको एक हाथ दो rotten mango मिल जाते हैं, you just have to do something with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, again, only when the conversation starts, we can figure out where the other person is at, and then we can
Absolutely.
see what we can do. The
Conversation is
othering doesn't help. Yeah.
you must have figured already I talk so much. I'm a chatterbox, honestly. So मेरे लिए बहुत मायने रखता है because I'm not someone who would, go very aggressive, passive aggressive, violence. I'd rather
Right.
sit with the person. I would rather sugarcoat
Right.
people and then, take them my way because it is good because I focus a lot on psychology, honestly, because
Hmm.
I want to know what the opponent is actually thinking. Why
Yep.
is they thinking this way and what can I do to help them go through it? Because
Hmm.
uh, as much as protest and pride marches and all of that is going to happen, but grassroots work is something that I honestly believe in very strongly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all of this starts from where you begin, because since this question is
Yep.
also about workspace, but it's not just about workspace. It divides further because I'm always being asked, why are you so vocal? Why do you have to carry this, LGBT tag on your forehead? Zaruri nahi hai because heterosexuals don't talk. And this is literally goes throughout on social media. And it is for me, it's important because I'm like, do you even understand that your life itself is very political? Queer, queer life is very political. Life in
Yep.
itself is very political. You cannot avoid it. So I've been taking those conversations not just at workspace, especially in the last 2 years. जब आपको आप बाहर नहीं जा सकते, you would turn to social media,
Hmm.
you will do a lot of dating apps. So I've realized how social media applications, especially on dating apps, because social media से बहुत ज़्यादा थके हो. Honestly, I have been very bored talking to my same set of friends, and then I moved on to dating applications. So, it can be as you are as an application where conversations like these can be started. A lot of other applications, even if it's a random stranger, I do not think it's very weird. Social media is a very, very strong game, and that is
Yep.
exactly how the digital media also plays that role. Just start a conversation wherever you feel, be that on a street or be that on an app. It needs to be started because we have a habit of keeping it to yourself. If you keep it to
Yeah.
yourself all the way, you will just probably be in that closet, and that closet is going to turn into a coffin, and you wouldn't even know.
Yeah, and but then also, just to add to your point, yes, I understand conversations are important, but then one should also feel safe enough to start that kind of conversation
Absolutely, absolutely.
and have the
Safety is good.
confidence to be able to go through with that conversation, depending on the relationship we have with the other person. Random stranger ko, I can just say, yeah, I'm a lesbian. I don't give a whatever if you don't. But you can't feel. I mean, you can't necessarily do that with a parent unless you feel safe enough that they'll be okay.
Exactly. So that's where I people don't really want to acknowledge their privilege. Honestly, I
Hmm.
couldn't acknowledge my privilege as well, but it is later in time where I actually understood it. Because today, if I'm that confident, it is because of
Hmm.
my family, and it is also because of the privilege that I have of not going through certain kind of problems that everyone goes through their growing
Hmm.
up years. So now I am very vocal because I know a lot of people who cannot speak. I know a lot, since
Yeah.
you mentioned that. So that is the kind of space that I want to create. I have been doing that constantly in my workspace, though I still struggle with it. I do that in my family. I do that wherever I go. So I believe that a lot of people like me who are out there and confident, they should be doing it day in and day out, so that people,
Hmm.
who do not have that safe space will at least,
Yeah.
have their confidence being boosted कि कल को जाके वो
Yeah.
बात करने के लिए उतना safe feel करे, regardless of the
Yeah.
person not being accepting, but at least have the confidence of expressing yourself.
Yep.
And that actually will put a lot of filters. Honestly, the biggest part I'll tell you of telling people who I am, which it is good for your mental health because you start eliminating a lot of queer folks from your life.
Yeah.
Be that your family, be that your friends, be that your colleagues. Later, getting stuck in the back after 10 years, it's better you do it now. So it also becomes a very filter, honestly. It is also important because
True.
your mental health is first. So
True. True.
but of course, it's a process. It's a process. I
Hmm.
always focus. I always tell people, don't be in a hurry. No one's forcing you to come out. There is
Yeah.
absolutely no hurry. It is a process. All of us have taken n number of years to be where we are, to understand and
Hmm.
acknowledge our identity. Don't fall under the social pressure कि आपको बताना ही है, because जब
Exactly.
सामने इंसान को भी आप बताते हो, they need a lot of time to soak in. And
True.
this is
True.
just not India, because we cannot blame a conservative like society like India. We have United States and a lot of other continents where people still have issues regardless of equal
Yeah.
rights. So it's a process. We need a lot of
Yeah.
patience because I know the kind of mistakes I've made, because I forgot to mention this point. My mother was upset with me because the entire world and social media and internet knew I was gay, but my mother didn't. She was the last person. And I got wanked for it only because she's like, everyone knows, but I do not. So next time when you have friends, tell
Oh.
them there is no hurry. Tell your people first. Then you can go and talk about other people and
Yeah.
other places. But just like eliminate that thought कि this is a mandate कि
Yeah.
मुझे बताना है. Just don't
Yeah.
fall for it.
True. True. Very true. Very true. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, generally when I talk to anybody, also I do make this point कि you don't have to, but just be mindful of your safety if you think you want to.
Absolutely. That is
Yeah.
also important considering the life that we live in today, where you do not even know that you might get threats in your DM. It starts as small as
Yeah.
there. So it is
Yeah.
understandable. You need to
Yeah.
understand your space. You need to understand the kind of people that you're dealing with. If you think that they don't matter to you, there's no need. No one's forcing you unless you're getting paid for
True.
it, yes, but not otherwise.
Yeah. True. So about journalism, what what does it mean for an article or a publication or a news media when they say they're inclusive? What is the idea, basic idea?
Personally, for me, the current situation in this country is very, very bad. Journalism is actually nowhere in this country because it's been dominated by so much of ideologies, be that religious, political or any other sorts, it's very bad.
Hmm.
But when I look at it as inclusion, because I had a lot of problems, honestly, approaching colleagues when I used to write my own articles or have other
Hmm.
people's articles being edited. So for me, when it's about inclusion in journalism, you have a lot of empathy. You need to understand your social structure and how it is
Hmm.
going to affect readers, because right now journalism is equal to business. For you, what matters is how many readers you have, what is the turnaround period for your article. So it's like a race, it's like a horse race, मुझे पहले
Hmm.
push करना है, breaking news है, ये है वो है. And then there is a lot of lack of sensitivity, not
Hmm.
just about LGBT rights, but in general about minority issues. It's like
Yeah.
a constant race. I'm going to push it first. I'm going to push it first. So, it starts with empathy.
Hmm.
Understand, these are basics of journalism that we have been taught when we enter a particular field. Ki
Hmm.
you need to understand who you are talking to. You need to understand
Hmm.
the society, how they feel. Uh, be true, be very candid, be very true. Because, for example, if tomorrow I am, say, for example, interviewing you as a queer person, I want to be very empathetic towards you, understand and acknowledge, yes, you come from a minority community. Because a lot of people, they do not understand this.
Hmm.
For them, it becomes like, oh yeah, it's a random person. I'm going to interview and just publish. That becomes a
Hmm.
problem because again, you do not understand that this is a minority community. This community is something
Hmm.
that struggles with basic rights. So it needs to come from the heart, because there are times when in
Yeah.
journalism you have to think 20% at least from your heart, then you apply your brain. So have that
Yeah.
sympathy while you hold that conversation, and then go ahead, then you probably write an article. Now, the second point is about the language. A lot of times it is very templated. It is very
Hmm.
templated. You mention your name, you mention what job you have, your age, XYZ. Just publish it like a regular news article. Like I'll tell you, for
Hmm.
example, I'm putting a trigger warning here. I'm going to talk about harassment and violence. A lot of transgender community members were killed in the pandemic. Cases have not been filed. So when you file, for example, when headlines are being put out, very derogatory. You will still find a lot of publications using derogatory terms like eunuchs. Eunuch
Yep.
being killed, eunuchs been this and that. And when you know honestly the fact that these are derogatory terms, you're not supposed to use these terms.
Hmm.
One is that starting from the headline, the business, especially in digital media, is very clickbait. What will get me
Yeah.
more clicks? What will get me
Yeah.
more conversion rate? That thought process needs to change when you're reporting about a minority community.
Yeah.
You need to understand it is okay to make mistakes. All of us make mistakes, but
Yeah.
when someone's coming and correcting you, you need to accept it.
Yep.
That's one of those problems that I had initially, because I have a lot of senior journalists who've been in the field for more than 20 years. So
Hmm.
they have this rigid ideology कि नहीं, हमारे
Hmm.
हिसाब से ये हमें लगता है तो हम यूज करेंगे. You have to go around them and tell them कि this is why it is wrong. This is what the history is. So
Hmm.
again, you need to be, you know, ये सोच बहुत गलत है. बिकॉज जब मैं बात करता था सीनियर जर्नलिस्ट को, हम कभी कहते कि तुम तो अभी अभी आए हो, तुमसे हमें क्यों ही सीखना है. You need
Hmm.
to understand the fact, you need to learn it from a horse's mouth. What they say about the issues is correct. So be very accepting of change. It is very
Hmm.
important because journalism is a very dynamic media. It changes every second on Twitter.
Hmm.
Be understanding of the fact of the issues, be respectful, be very mindful of the language. Keep your clickbait nature and journalism aside. It matters to your business, but it shouldn't get in through, because when you talk about minority issues, your job is as giving out justice. Your job is
Hmm.
not of just publishing that news and moving ahead. It is a social
Hmm.
responsibility. If I have interviewed a person from a minority community, it is my
Hmm.
duty that it's एक तो because you publish it, because you are a part of the entire official channel. You want
Right.
ministers and everyone to read that article, so it
Yep.
better have really mindful words. So second being the language, be very mindful of the kind of language that you want to put out.
Hmm.
Still, I'm sure 90% of media channels still don't understand. They are very phobic. But out of that 90%, 70% are because of rigid ideologies where they do not accept change. The rest 20% is only because they do not have anyone to, come and tell them that this is wrong. And
Right.
because uh, I don't like blaming my own community, but कभी कभार ये हो जाता है ना कि sometimes, which is understandable, it's very
Hmm.
psychological that we have an outburst. Oh my God, they've put this out. Oh my God, ye galat hai.
Hmm.
But then out of that 10 people bashing the organization, if one person actually comes and tells, like, you know what, this is where you went wrong, probably I'll help you. So that's the kind of mindset that I started applying at workspace,
Right.
teaching people. I developed a couple of training modules for my own organization where I did very basic, Queer 101, understand what the
Hmm.
terminology is, understand the kind of,
Hmm.
basics, ask a person what
Hmm.
their pronouns are, ask
Hmm.
how they identify, how they, not use dead names, very basics.
Right.
Put that out. Once you feel that you are right with the language, then push it out. It is okay if
Hmm.
that news article goes half an hour late. It shouldn't matter. So that become a very major point for me, because coming from a major organization, I'm glad that my editor was really supportive. For her, it didn't
Hmm.
matter if we are not the first one to push it out. It is okay if you sit on it, correct the language, and then put it out. It's better than hurting sentiments and triggering it as well, because there are a lot of times when this language becomes mentally triggering for the community
Yeah,
members.
absolutely. I
So
mean,
the
it's
second
sorry.
major
Go
point
ahead.
is about
Hmm.
having the language
Language.
correct.
Right.
And the third one is response. Because a lot of time when we publish articles, people in need respond to us. And
Hmm.
then they do not, they're not acknowledged at all. There are actually people reaching out for problems. There are actually people seeking help. I also want
Right.
to, voice my opinion. I want to come and
Right.
speak to you.
Right.
Understand that they are a minority community, and you being a journalist, it is your responsibility to take their voices ahead, make them more
Hmm.
vocal, bring them up front on the dais. So the third
Hmm.
point is about responding to people. It is very important, because कल को जाके
Hmm.
अगर आप किसी politician को respond करते हो, अगर
Hmm.
उनको जवाब नहीं मिलेगा, तो you know what politicians can do, you know what other officials to do. So people who are always on a higher chair, you are under the fear because they are in power. So you also need to acknowledge that the queer community has a lot of power. It is only because of the legal system, which is very weak, that we cannot do anything. And it is our
Hmm.
duty as journalists to make sure that you help them ahead. So I think
Yep.
these are the three major points. Be empathetic towards minority community, be that however it is, having more inclusive, socially, talk more about equity when it comes about your content. And the third
Hmm.
one is about acknowledging and being more responsive. Because the
Hmm.
first thing that you always, because अगर कल को अगर कोई प्रॉब्लम आए, तो एक तो आप पहले पुलिस के बारे में सोचोगे, सेकेंडली आप मीडिया लोगों के बारे में सोचोगे. पुलिस तो खैर, वी ऑल ऑफ अस नो हाउ कॉप्स कैन बी. The second person that you would rely on is on journalists, because you have a sense of pride there. You have a
Hmm.
higher pitch of confidence कि चलो cops help नहीं करेंगे, तो I approach a journalist. Probably a journalist will call up and heckle the cop
Hmm.
कि why are you not filing an FIR, which is also
Right.
comes under the response bracket. So I think when it's about
Yeah.
inclusive journalism, these are the three major points that every media person in this, not just the I'll talk about my country because we live in India, but need to follow. And all of us make mistake, and I think it's completely all right. But
Yeah.
change needs to begin somewhere. We cannot sit with rigid ideology saying मुझे तो अभी कुछ बदलना ही नहीं है, because as long as you are working with an organization, even when you leave an organization, you're still identified. If tomorrow I leave the organization in another year, I'll still have the media tag on me. So that sense of pride and responsibility should still come in, because you need to know that you will go and influence hundreds and lakhs of other people. So take that up. It is okay if you're spending a couple of more minutes in your life to do someone else's work, but always acknowledge that you are a privileged majority group, and other people seeking more equal rights and equity in the society need your help. So I always say that being from the media background, you are also a 20% social worker in your working hours. Do it.
Yep.
Take it up. It
Yeah.
would only make good difference, nothing else. It's okay to burn more calories. I don't see any problem in that. And sometimes, of course, I've actually been more rigid, where people do not really understand that on a more professional and emotional tangent. There are times when you have to heckle people as well, and it's completely fine. And I always tell my community friends as well, it is also okay to heckle us. Journalists make mistakes. They will keep
Hmm.
making mistakes. You cannot expect 100% change. And it is okay. Do not fear us. Do not fear any journalist, because we are also getting paid because people are reading. People from the community, outside the community, we
Yeah.
work for you. So if you do not come and speak to us, if you do not come and heckle us, there is no scope of learning. do not have that fear. I still get heckled by as a community member. There are times I could make a mistake because I've also learned a lot of changes that we constantly have because it's again a dynamic group and it is
Yeah.
completely fine.
Yeah, I think a lot depends on how the criticism or the heckling is taken, right? How one responds to it. If I think it's also how your manager was mindful about, okay, let's do the right thing, not, be the first one to push. I think that will in the leadership, if it is there in the top leadership, unless like most of the changes that we see, a lot of, I wouldn't say most of them, but quite a few number of organizations which have put up policies, it is somewhere because there is somebody clear in the top management who made sure it has to be pushed. Otherwise, it's like, oh, everybody is doing it, let's also do it. But apart from that, genuinely and being empathetic and saying ki, okay, this is the right way to do, karke karne wale probably are literally handful. So I think you need
Not even
more
a handful.
people.
It's just one organization in 10 because everyone else is interested in pink washing, honestly. You wouldn't believe
Yeah.
my organization had an insurance policy only in 2021 for everyone. It took more than 175 years.
Ow,
And
for everyone.
I had completed 5 years, but I'm only proud of the fact that it came out of empathy. It did not come out of the pink washing nature कि हमें करना है because बाकी corporates कर रहे हैं. I'm not even sure if
Right.
other media organizations do it or not, but I am very proud because it has come after a lot of unlearning, a lot of
Hmm.
learning new things, and then
Hmm.
putting it up. And I was completely all up for it because
Hmm.
people came and asked, you've been working for 5 years when the insurance policy came. Why did it take so much of time? It has
Hmm.
come only when there has actually been an honest change in a newsroom. It is
Yeah.
not only because ki karna hai isliye karna hai. And I'm not saying that it
Huh.
did not have flaws. It also had flaws because the flaws in the legal system itself. But it
Yeah.
has come again only as a social responsibility and empathy and the sense of equity from the HR for all employees, regardless of whatever
Hmm.
orientation they have and regardless of
Yeah.
whatever background they have. So I'm really proud that that actually happened. And that should, I think this is something that should be more inspiring for other organizations, but it is still a problem because a lot of corporates that I know are still doing it only because, again, marketing, June Pride Month is
Yeah.
going to come.
Yeah.
Uh, and we have to, show a queer face. So you need to put that spectrum out. So it has
Yeah.
majorly come only because of that reason. There's
Yeah.
nothing apart from that.
Intention. Deep down, the intention isn't
Exactly.
really there. Yeah.
And
Intention matters.
ironically, there are times when my community friends also complain, saying, कि थोड़ा जल्दी कर लो, थोड़ा जल्दी कर लो. And I'm like, you need to give them time. It is an organization
Yeah.
with lakhs of people. Some
Hmm.
startups are barely 100, 150 people, and it is not easy. Would you
Yeah.
rather not want queer policies after everyone is actually giving you the safe space, or do you just want to, have that probably like an IPC which is just there on papers, and when you're actually trying to apply it, there's no one standing for you?
Exactly.
It is
Exactly.
always better if it's weighed the worth.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because uh, पेपर में आने के बाद whether it's legal changes, IPC changes or company के policies, mindset change
Mhm.
होने में it will take years if not decades.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and that speeds up only if the intent is right.
Exactly.
So
And
I'm
again,
glad. Yeah,
patience plays an important
yeah,
role. You have to be patient with your organization,
yeah, yeah.
regardless of whatever you feel. Of course, there are times when you have to expedite the process because when I started a
Hmm,
D&I program at times, I had to,
hmm.
run behind them, do it, do it, do it. But it still
Right,
took me 2 years. It took me 2 years to have an
right.
intersectionality training for all the employees at times. But I also
Wow.
understood that uh, even when I was sitting on their head, they wanted to
Hmm.
understand the training themselves first, as an HR in the
Right,
organization, and then giving out to people. So it was
right.
okay because if you have spent so many years and making people understand, it
Hmm,
is okay to at least give another year or two and then let them,
hmm.
go and make other people understand. Of course, meanwhile, if you
Yeah,
have any other issues before having the legal system in place, people will always there to have your back, but it is important
right.
that it comes with the heart should always be in the right place. So
Hmm.
that's something that we have to keep a note of always.
Yeah, and I was just looking at the next question. I kind of realized you've already answered the next question, which is how easy or hard has it been to start the conversation around inclusive journalism. So I'll just move on to the next question. What
Hmm.
changes can a publication and their viewership do to make journalism inclusive? This is kind of bits and pieces you've answered this also, I think. Go on.
Have more communication opportunities, because currently that is
Hmm.
what the media fraternity lacks, because you would want to run behind celebrities, you want to run about any other trending people, but the minority is barely, being spoken to. There are very few channels which actually, for example, Faye has always been there. She's always,
Hmm.
done a lot of programs and shows and going on and talking to people.
Hmm.
And it is the easiest way. For a journalist, it is the easiest to go and talk to a random stranger. Take that
Hmm.
opportunity. If you're talking to
Hmm.
10 big celebrities at a time, talk to a queer person, talk to anyone else from the
Hmm.
minority community, understand. Because I always keep saying that throughout, as our profession as journalists, every day is like being in school. We learn a new thing every day. So when it's
Hmm.
about inclusivity, of course, there are no books in this country. Our education system doesn't even preach I for inclusion at all. So ये तभी आएगा जब आप बाहर जाके समाज से बात करोगे, आप उनका ध्यान रखोगे, what are their needs, why are they in the current situation, because a lot of times people tell me, oh my God, Pride में तो इतने, thousands and lakhs of people work, you have
Hmm.
so many opportunities to celebrate. But I'm like, have you seen the amount of percentage when you actually calculate the population? Do you want to see the amount of strength that we have? And we are legally a minuscule minority, because we
Yep.
do not even, a lot of people do not even know that, we as a queer person can't even donate blood, because ethically we cannot, because we are considered under a minority group, which is also a lot of other medical issues, is what the
Yeah.
government thinks. So having issues like these, it is important for journalists to understand why are they called a minority. Because लोगों का ये सवाल आता है कि reservation, majority, minority, they're like
Hmm.
equality चाहिए, तो start calling yourself a minority. But I'm like, no, we are a minority socially, politically, and these are the reasons. So start communicating, because my manager knew more about the community. My colleagues knew more about the community, because they used to sit with me for a cup of tea
Hmm.
in break hours, to understand how my
Hmm.
life has been, to understand a lot of people. And they had, they made that effort. So it has
Right.
to come from your heart. It has to come from your heart कि चलो आज मैंने इतने कर लिया, तो फलाना चलो आज मैं जाके किसी क्वेयर कम्युनिटी वाले से बात कर लूंगा. Let that be a story beyond the June Pride month. I will not do it merely only
Yeah.
because I want to start pink washing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It needs to come from my heart. So communication, conversation is the key. Start approaching, because research is a major part of our job. Research and analysis is a major
Hmm.
part of our job, especially in social circles. It needs to begin from there. But you also have to be accepting of the fact that I will make mistakes, because ज्यादातर
Yeah.
लोग ये नहीं करते, including my own colleagues, they like, वो अच्छा मेरे पास आज LGBT की story आ गई, तुम कर लो. I used to do it initially, but I'm like, नहीं आज तुम करोगे, because कल को अगर
Exactly.
मेरी मौत हो जाएगी तो तुम्हें तो करना ही पड़ेगा
What?
ना. This needs to change, no, because equity in
Yeah.
the true sense will be when you will write for someone else. You will not ask the
Exactly.
community. This is like, telling one minority to write about itself. Let the majority use their privilege and, start writing about it.
Hmm.
This will come only जब आपने communicate कर लिया, फिर आप लिखना शुरू कीजिए. And it is okay to make
Hmm.
mistakes. If you are making mistakes,
Hmm.
come back to us. I tell my
Yeah.
colleagues every time, write an article, I will sit and edit it, but then you make sure that you're all ears for it, acknowledge that you
Exactly.
have made mistakes and be ready to the changes that we give you. And
Hmm.
I have that power because I'm a part of the community. So
Right.
आपने लिख तो लिया, because बहुत लोगों का ये होता है ना कि चलो आज मैंने बात तो कर ली, बट अब मैं मेरे हिसाब से पब्लिश कर दूंगा. वैसे नहीं होता है.
Hmm. Hmm.
Inclusion in
Hmm.
the true sense comes when you actually, maintain the communication candidly, have the person's content, figure it out, draft it accordingly, and then publish it. Because a lot of times there have been problems and a lot of queer issues, when people are being interviewed, their words have been badly minced and, published
Hmm.
in the very wrong way.
Right.
So it is really important that, you need to stop taking that ownership a little down. कि ये मेरा आर्टिकल
Hmm.
मैंने लिखा है, लेकिन ये इशू किसी
Right.
और का है, तो यहाँ पे मेरा
Hmm.
मैटर ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, मेरी बाईलाइन इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, because this becomes a problem. Byline is basically the name coming behind an
Yeah.
article,
Hmm.
sense of pride. I wrote about a minority. People do that. It is very shameful. A lot of journalists misuse minority communities for their bylines कि मैंने social work किया, but that needs to
Hmm.
come from the right place. So
Yeah.
understand, start writing, start figuring out and research more. This is how
Hmm.
inclusion is going to start, because you cannot sit in an AC office or go out reporting and expect people to come and talk to you, because
Hmm.
there has been enough of steps being taken by the minority community. It is majority like media people, it is majority like,
Hmm.
cops, politicians, people who come with a lot
Hmm.
of privilege. They need to come and talk.
Hmm.
And especially when I always mention that we are a social bridge. Our job is to
Right.
talk to people in general, talk to the society, and pass that message on, so that the legal system, because you want to communicate to a politician, you know that you want to approach a media
Hmm.
group. You want to communicate with a cop, you know who's going to heckle them.
Hmm.
So start acknowledging that. And if you take these are very, ये कहने में बहुत आसान लगता है लोगों को,
Yeah.
कि मैं
Yeah.
बात तो कर लूंगा, बट असलियत में बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है. So it is important that
Slow
every
process.
media fraternity does that mindfully by themselves, because I have seen in the last 5.5 years how my own organization has changed. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that it is still right. There have been a lot of times, even until a few days before that, there have been made mistakes in a lot of
Right.
articles, but
Hmm.
not being rigid of that ideology, they have been very open to change. So it is
Hmm.
important when
That's
you
true.
have to be open to that change.
Hmm.
And lastly is have the sense of equity, because
Hmm.
equity is not just, I mean, we talk a lot about equality. We are in
Hmm.
2022. Equity matters. You
Yeah.
uplifted people, you let them use your privilege to be on an equal platform, but you need to give them that voice. So everything that you write on a daily basis, every person that you talk to, you need to talk to them with
Hmm.
a sense of equity, and tell them ki, I will step back today. I will step
Right.
back today because this space is yours. And if this space is not yours, I will make sure that it becomes yours. There are a
Hmm.
lot of times, and even I give away my space. I want someone else to come and speak from the community. So I
Right.
would want that for every media person to do that. But then, as
Hmm.
much as we do all of this, the major hiccup for organization becomes, lack of information and lack of training modules, because there are a
Hmm.
lot of agencies in this country who offer D&I trainings, who offer a lot of other trainings for not just media fraternity, but people in general.
Right.
But again, the problem is that these are again cisgender, majorly heterosexual driven organizations and agencies who come and train you, which is
Hmm.
appropriation and a major mistake in the first place.
Yeah.
A cisgender heterosexual person will not understand the problems that the queer community needs to go through.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
believe this is a systematic problem. Probably a
Hmm.
lot of us, who are educated enough, privileged enough with that experience, I think it is us who need to, offer these services to a lot of these news agencies कि हम आके आपको समझाएंगे कि ये ऐसे नहीं ऐसे होता है. Because जब मैंने शुरू किया था, there are still not a lot of open people at workspace. So
Hmm.
उनका हमेशा का कंप्लेन यही रहा है कि आप आके बात करते हो, बट हमें और लोग भी चाहिए. Because I can, as a
Hmm.
non-binary person, I can talk about, people who identify like me. I can talk about, bisexual and
Right.
gay men. I cannot
Right.
talk about issues by the transgender community. I cannot talk
Right.
about Dalit rights. So
Right.
that is a major issue, which I'm not blaming on the minority community, because again, not everyone is available. Not everyone knows that there are opportunities. But
Hmm.
but the companies need to come and tell out openly, कि
Hmm.
we need a D&I trainer, because I think in the last 2-3 years is when actually something as D&I existed, because there was no job
Yeah.
as such, that, oh, you can
True.
become a
True.
diversity and inclusion trainer. It wasn't really a
True.
job. It has become one. It has become one because a lot of us have started re-owning our spaces, and some organizations
Hmm.
have honestly come by themselves saying कि हमको जरूरत नहीं है.
Hmm.
So when it's about learning, it is important that you actually have a right resource. And right
Yep.
now, in comparison, the resource is not actually available as much as you need. Because if you talk about Bombay, I have come across at least 10 plus agencies to, offer the training that my organization wanted.
Hmm.
But everything was cisgender heterosexual driven. And I am someone who believes in giving equal work. I am not letting someone who is not from the community give that training. So currently, that is something that lacks. I think that is again mine, your responsibility, and the community's responsibility. Let's come ahead, because इतने
Yeah.
साल हम काम कर ही रहे हैं, तो we need to change. We need to shift our gear.
Yeah.
Let's offer our opportunities, because it's not major requirement. They don't
Yeah.
really need something high skilled, and you need some fancy education.
Exactly.
Nothing. They just
Exactly.
want someone who's good at communicating in a particular language
Hmm.
or probably in multiple languages, has to come from a particular community and can,
Hmm.
talk to a larger audience. So the major
Right.
hiccup right now in our industry is we do not have the right set of people to talk to, because people will talk to Harish Iyer, people will talk to Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi, everyone who's there. But it is not important because these are people who cannot leave their job and come, help organization. So we
Right.
need people
Right.
in the middle tier to come and help us, because it becomes a lot of
Right.
times an issue for me as well, because when I have to talk about other, community issues, I
Hmm.
don't really have equal representation. So the
Right. Right.
major chunk where, we as a society can work through is making those resources available. And eventually,
Hmm.
of course, we do see a way where, you don't have to go on the internet and get triggered by the article, because that is currently my aim, at least in the next 5 years, that
Yeah.
I do not want to go on the internet and, read an article being, someone's being misgendered, someone's being, uh, you know, there are times when people even get abused in articles. It's very shameful, and I want to apologize, as a part of the fraternity, that I'm really sorry if, anyone from the communities has gotten emotionally or mentally triggered. I'm really sorry, but it is also a learning process. Please give us
Hmm.
that chance, because 2 out of 10 times are the only time when people actually, come and tell us, ki, I'm willing to tell you where you went wrong,
Right.
because every
Right.
time we cannot stand with the whip. So give us that
Yeah.
opportunity. We would want to learn. We are open to that change, but that ideology is as equal as your parents' ideology of changing towards the community. So give us that time. It cannot come in a
Hmm.
snap.
Right.
So it is again always a to and fro equal barter. You
Yeah.
have to be patient. You have to be open to the change.
Hmm. But isn't like I just wanted to ask. I actually have two questions. One is, isn't it easier now because of the pandemic? A lot of things have come online. Finding resource people to give DNI, you know,
To join.
I hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So I was actually asking, isn't it easier right now with the internet and everything to find resource people for sessions?
It is very absolutely. You go on dating apps, you go on social media, you would find people. But again, is there a sense of dedication to it? Because some people would actually, come for once, give the training and go on. But again, it's a process. You need that dedication. Honestly, you wouldn't find a lot of people, picking it up. But again, equity
Right.
again comes in place, because what happens is when a lot of people hire people for D&I modules,
Hmm.
पे becomes a problem, because
Right.
वही लगता है कि चलो हाँ LGBT community से है, हाथ में थोड़ी बहुत पैसे दे देंगे one time. That sense of
Right.
equity doesn't come, because they
Right.
forget the fact that this is where we earn our bread from. The sense of equity doesn't come. So if organizations, come ahead and say, that this is an opportunity, you will be paid as per the market. I'm sure a lot of people will come ahead and, start
True.
giving out, becoming the resource that all of us want.
True. True.
But of course, it
And
is it has actually become a lot easier, in the last 2 years. I've been
right.
seeing a lot of organizations sitting at home because you couldn't communicate going out in physical
Right.
workspaces. But I've seen a lot of
Right.
people actually. I've seen so many companies, slipping into your DMs. It has become that casual, which is
Okay.
important, I guess. It is very important because it feels very personal, it feels very
Yeah.
personal, because before the
Yeah.
pandemic, I used to give trainings to a lot of BMM and BA colleges for inclusion, but it
Hmm.
became more easier for me and felt like that personal connect when people started approaching me on social media,
Right. Right.
toning the communication down, because when you make it
Right.
more casual, make it more friendly,
Hmm.
you feel like you're in the right space. So that is
True.
also one of the factors which I think a lot of us need to keep in mind.
Right, right, true. So, the other question that I had is around the Madras High Court. I think a couple of months back they had come up with language that they want media and government departments to use, terminology to be precise, in Tamil and in English. So rules around what identity should be addressed as what. Uh, do you think something like this on a national level for all English media? I mean, regional would be absolutely brilliant, but to start with a standardized terminology will eliminate a lot of the words that you were earlier saying are problematic, are still being used. So, एक standard की तरह if it is made, it is definitely a step forward, wouldn't you say?
It actually will, because sometimes you need that whip on media as well, because we follow that on a regular basis. We don't misquote officials, we don't misquote cops, because
Right,
we have that fear of tomorrow we getting a legal notice. And it
right,
has actually helped in the Tamil media fraternity that you have, because a lot of a lot of Tamil and Andhra Pradesh media people were infamous for running transphobic and other queerphobic shows.
yep,
And when that
yep,
language put out, I'm not saying that it was complete, because it ignored a lot of other minorities within the community, but at least someone standing on your head for making mistakes and later getting bashed for it,
yeah,
it will definitely be important. But again, you know even when it comes at plays, one is I want the community to be included in that process, in just like other judgments, because when Nalsa came in, the trans bill came in, people from the community weren't really considered. It was just, again, decided by cisgender heterosexuals sitting on those chairs and putting it out. It is very, very important. But again, whoever sits in the house who passes that bill, passes that as a law later, first they need to go undergo that training first. To sit there and first and forget that need to have equal representation in the house when these issues are actually discussed. Have one representative from every identity in the LGBT spectrum. Ask them, do an R&D, prepare a document, then present it in the house, let that bill be passed. But even when the bill is being passed, have other people being informed way in advance, that because a lot of people just get triggered the moment you say LGBT people, god knows for what reasons. So it has to start in the house first, and then, but of course the law is going to help. But like at least 2-3% in my head, I again come to that कि इंडिया में ऐसे तो कितने सारे laws हैं on paper है, when you actually come in person, it doesn't really honestly help. I am very much adamant in in training people first. Ideologies को पहले बदलो, law आना है, पता है. Because right now a lot of community people are focusing on equal marriage and laws, but to a certain extent I believed in the Supreme Court's one of the panel judges ki it's a process. Because if we have to figure out equal marriage laws in the country, we'll have to change a lot of other pre-existing laws. There is property division, there is equal partnership act, there is there is abortion, there is a lot of other issues, which I'm not saying that they're correct in. They have to there is ample amount of work to be done, but let that change happen. Because अगर अभी equal marriage laws आ गए, जरूरी नहीं है ना कि आपकी शादी होगी. Because we look at a lot of other, I mean, so many, we live in a country where people from different caste or different religion getting married and they later get killed. Do you want to be put in that situation? No, right? Rather invest and be that resource in changing the mindset and changing the ideology of the officials, and later
hmm,
having that impact. Of course, it's a burning
hmm,
issue. We need to keep forcing, but I think sometimes we lack in communicating enough why you need it. Because of course it's understandable that it comes out of a lot of social pressure, a lot of struggles in the past, that we have become this force where we're like a brick right now. Like, give us what we want, or else you will probably bash you up. It becomes that. So that's the trouble right now. Let's invest in you know putting up more time, communicate with people, and then later having those issues. Of course, these rules and laws already exist, because every media organization have their template of language, but the application in person is very different. Laws will help, but again, if you look at the current Indian media and broadcasting laws, they do not really allow us, free journalism isn't really a thing in this country. Even if we celebrate a free press day, it isn't really the actual situation on ground. But definitely, I hope laws like these are implemented. That could be like a whip for a media company to do, but later in time. I would still invest in changing ideologies first.
Yeah, I think more conversations around this should come out, need to come out for changes to happen. So I think we'll end it here. Thank you so much for your time. And it's going to get louder. I think people are already in Friday mode यहाँ पे. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a very interesting conversation.
Thank
And
you
I'll
so
get in
much for
touch with
having me.
you. You take care.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If you have a lot of more questions, I'm always available. If anyone
Sure.
watching the live, if you have questions, you can just get into my DMs and I'll be happy to help.